that your primary task on the AP English language exam this May is a rhetorical analysis essay, I decided to put together this checklist, this cheat sheet, which I hope will help you unpack passages moving forward. I set it up as a checklist so that you can get practice with the analysis of passages. And as you become more familiar with the items on the checklist, the idea is that you become more efficient. And the idea also is that you'll rely less on the note taking here. It's just meant to give you a series of interchangeable wording options that you may or may not necessarily use. But it at least models those verbs that are key to this particular task. So let me kind of walk you through it very quickly. If you recall, one of the tools, the analytical tools that I shared with you earlier this year was SOAPstone, the acronym SOAPstone. So I've taken that acronym and I've broken it up into a series of different boxes that you can fill out as you're reading a speech or an essay. So the first box is the genre, identifying what kind of nonfiction passage it is. The second box is essentially inferring the kind of speaker that you're writing about. And the reason it's as detailed as it is to kind of reinforce the idea that one can infer oftentimes the perspective or tone of a particular piece if one knows a little bit about where the speaker is coming from. The occasion box is all about sort of unpacking not just the historical context of the passage, but also the exigence, the catalyst or incident that spurred this person into writing or speaking. The audience box has to do with who it is that they're writing to, and being able to infer what those audience expectations are given the context, given the exigence, given the situation, and given the subject and the speaker. Okay. Next row, there's a box for purpose. Beyond just being able to identify the specific purpose of the text, one might want to back up a bit and think about the general purpose of the text. Is it to inform? Is it to understand something? Is it to convince an audience of something, to examine, to discourage, to encourage, to critique or criticize, etc.? And if none of those possibilities work for you, you might want to conjure up one of your own at the bottom here. And then for the subject, obviously every piece of text has a subject, essentially what the whole piece is about. But I have provided this box here to kind of give you an idea of how to categorize the subject. Is it a subject related to politics and government? Is it a subject related to language and writing, or personal identity, morality and ethics, and so on and so forth? Then this next box hopefully is super useful because it'll help you sort of identify and hone in on the specific tones a passage happens to be exuding. And you would want to check all that apply and try to find a logical way to incorporate as many of those tones as you can in the discussion of your passage. And then this last box, I think, will help structure your essay itself. If anytime you're reading a short speech or a short essay, you should ask yourself, where are the natural divisions? How can I divide this passage into three parts? You know, what's going on at the beginning, what's happening in the middle, and what is happening at the end. And those divisions will then help structure how you're going to divide your body paragraphs in your essay. So after all of that reading and annotation, you'll want to come up with an effective introduction for your essay. And an effective introduction for the rhetorical analysis essay has three parts: the hook, the bridge, and the argument. Obviously, for your hook, you want to pull your reader in and make your intro stampy. That's an acronym for a number of different strategies you can employ to pull the reader in. And really, that hook should only be about a sentence long. Your bridge is the who and the how. That's where you introduce the author and the situation, and that's where you also introduce the type of text and the overall tone or quality. And then lastly, every introduction needs to have a defensible, arguable thesis. That's the what. That's the primary argument. That's where you explain in your own words what the entire passage is about. What is the overall argument? In other words, what does the writer want? What is their goal? And being able to kind of spell that out efficiently, precisely, concisely, directly will help you score in the upper half range. Beneath that, I gave you an example of how those three parts, the hook, the bridge, and the thesis, all work together for an introduction. This is an introduction I've shared with you before on the John Barry passage about scientists from the 2008 exam. I'm not going to read it here. You can read that on your own, but you can see how those three parts fit together. And then beneath here, I even left a space for you to kind of think about how you might want to structure your essay. So rather than organize the body of your essay in terms of devices, the best approach, as I mentioned, is to figure out what the divisions are in the passage, and then using those divisions to set up the divisions in your own essay. So your first body paragraph would be about what's happening in the first part of the passage. Your second body paragraph is about what's happening in the second part, and so on. And in the columns 2 and 3, I've included sentence stems you can use to sort of make your structure more cohesive and coherent and logical. And then in the third column, I've listed a number of general rhetorical choices or strategies or devices that you might encounter in any given piece. And so the idea is that to write a sophisticated essay is not to devote your essay to one specific device, but to be able to discuss different choices and strategies at the same time within the context of what's happening in each of the sections of the passage. Then to drive that point home a little further, at the bottom, I've taken those three boxes or three rows of boxes, and I've turned them into three topic sentences so that you can see how an essay on the John Barry passage would be structured. So for instance, topic sentence 1, John Barry begins by establishing the sort of qualities that make scientists worth respecting and admiring, traits which he emphasizes through his complimentary diction and frequent allusions to famous scientists, paragraphs 1 through 3. So a couple things I want you to point out to you here is that each of these topic sentences presents a sub-argument. They're all defensible, arguable statements. The second thing I want to point out is that I've included the paragraph numbers so that it gives the reader an idea of what the focus of that paragraph would be. And then also in each of the topic sentences, I've used transition phrases like begins by, in the middle part, Barry closes his argument. That kind of connects all these paragraphs together. So hopefully you find it helpful. And just a reminder that you will be allowed to use your notes during the exam this year. So it might be helpful to print out a copy or two of this cheat sheet. And as you're reading through your passage, you can be taking notes on this handout so that you can utilize this information in your essay.